And it's Ken Kraetzer for CaMMVetsMedia. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. And this is our Army football huddle. We're going to talk about Army's win over Holy Cross on Saturday and its upcoming home game at Senior Day, where they will face Coastal Carolina, a power from the Sun Belt Conference, and Myrtle Beach. So with us tonight, we are glad to have our producer director, Richard Miller. How are you, Richard?
Very, very well, Ken. Always great to be on the huddle with you guys.
Okay, and from Pelham, my CaMMVetsMedia report colleague, Jack McGurk.
How you doing? Great to be here.
Good to see you, Jack. And from South Jersey, from the class of 92, former Army football player, Steve Shalou. Steve, how are you?
Good evening.
Good evening to you now. Army has now won 2 in a row after a really tough 5-game stretch, getting a nice 17-14 win over Holy Cross, a game that Army went out ahead 14-0. And the first score was on a blocked punt. And that really got the game off to a good start. First drive, that Jabril Williams blocked the punt, and Elo Medosi picked it up, ran for the touchdown. Steve, what was your thought about Army getting off to a good start on that play?
The interesting thing is, as I was sitting there in the stand, somebody asked me a question, and I turned to my right and answered the question, and I didn't get to see the play happen live. I had to catch it on the replay. Happened very suddenly, and it's not uncommon for Army to be, special teams play. This year, it seems like it's been boom or bust with us. That was one of our better plays on special teams, and we got in there and made the block. And as you can see, that a special teams touchdown or sudden change like that on special teams is such an emotional boost to a team that we came out of the gate, and I thought, hey, this is the way we need to operate. So it was exciting for sure.
Very good. And then Army utilized the pitch play effectively. A couple of pitches by quarterback Bryson Daly to Tyrell Robinson, who is looking like a lot closer to his former self, his extraordinary play before his injury. And we talked to Tyrell tonight in post-practice talk, and he's feeling better. He's feeling more comfortable. What did you think about Army bringing back the pitch play and using it effectively between Bryson Daly and Tyrell Robinson?
Well, if you've been a fan of the show, and I talk about how many times we're going to get the ball outside and how many times we're going to get the ball out on the pitch, and I thought we were more effective in this game with that. I think Daly eliminated the pitch man better, which means he gets closer to the pitch guy before he pitches it. I've seen it in a couple of games this year where we don't eliminate that person, and that person bounces outside, makes a tackle on the guy getting the pitch. So you got to eliminate that guy, put him on an island, and then pitch it as you get really close to them. I mean, he did a better job with that on there, and I thought it was really effective on how we did that. And I think we went away from it a little in the second half, but we had some promise early part of the game, and I like that play because that is it evens numbers for you because you're putting somebody on an island that can't make a play, and generally when you're outside there, you're down to one player and you can get a big gain out of it. So I like the execution of that, and I think we should do it more.
McGurk, what was your thoughts on watching the game?
It was it was a close game, heck of a game between these two schools. Army going up 14-0. Almost actually at one point it looked like they were going to go up 21-0 on a long touchdown pass, 69 yards. But the receiver ended up getting ruled. He went out at the 1-yard line, and then he was actually knocked out by a Holy Cross defender, which actually proved to be a significant play because then there was a goal line stand that Holy Cross was able to stop them. And although there was a penalty in the middle of that goal line stand on Army, but ultimately there was a turnover on downs. Holy Cross got the ball back, but they ultimately didn't score until the fourth quarter on a touchdown pass. But it was a pretty close game. It was I went in thinking it might be a high scoring one, but it wasn't.
Yeah, that was unfortunate. Both they got the 60-yard pass completion to Casey Reynolds from Bryson Daly, and Reynolds gets knocked out of bounds on the 1-yard line, and a first and goal from the 1. Army had scored, but then had a holding penalty. And Coach Munkin talked a bit about it today. One of his veterans, but then they get it back to, I think it was Steve, 4th and 1, and they let Bryson Daly run it. He gets smacked. I thought that again. I wonder why they didn't use Jacoby Buchanan. I asked both Coach Munkin that, and I asked Drew Thatcher that today. And Coach Munkin just said, it's nice to have 10 blockers out in front instead of 9.
Yeah, we've gone a lot to more of a more of a quarterback power situation. And we ran it pretty well against Air Force, and we ran it in this Holy Cross game quite a bit. And I think they went back to the well on that. Looking at the play, I think one of the linebackers got unblocked and came in free and made a heck of a tackle. I think he caught Daly mid-stride with a foot up in the air instead of being planted on the ground, so he had no leverage, and it knocked him backwards pretty heartily. And that was a pretty important play for us to make sure that we, got that next set of points and moved on and kept on schedule. But it was a good play by Holy Cross. Holy Cross is a talented team. Played really, really well, and had multiple opportunities to win this ball game. So, and if you remember from last week's show, I thought that this had all the makings of a trap game, and I think that there was that potential that it could have been. So it was tighter than most would have liked, but in college football, anytime you can walk away with a victory, that's a big thing, and they can learn from it and move on. So I think it was good for Army. I think Holy Cross showed very well themselves. So it was good all the way around.
Yeah, you really wonder, with Army playing well, how the losing, how they lost that game to Massachusetts. And I didn't attend that one. Was it just that the LSU game took so much out of the team that they weren't really ready for the Massachusetts game? That was a team they beat by 40 points last year.
Yeah, but with college football and the transfer portal, and UMass took full advantage of the transfer portal, you don't know what type of team you're coming up against. I mean, even if you look at Coastal Carolina, they've got 5 or 6 players that see significant time on their defense that came out of the portal with teams like Georgia Tech and others like that. So a team can come together pretty rapidly with talent. On the other side of it, they haven't played very much together. And as you get more towards the end of the season, the team starts to gel, and that talent will start rising up and play complementary football. So, UMass having the talent that they had, things may have just clicked for them, and they looked at the schedule and saw as Army as a team that they should or could beat, and they played up to where they could have eventually beat them. So, you can't take anything away from those teams, and Coastal is going to be difficult. I mean, you look at ESPN, I think they're a 76% chance of winning this game, even though it's a single digit line. It's going to, all these games get tough now with the portal because coaches come in that 5-year window that coaches used to have, and thanks to Deion Sanders and the rest of them, right? They want immediate results. They want immediate buzz now to bring money into the universities and to bring buzz into them. So the best way and fastest way to do that is to start renting players and bringing them in. So UMass did that, and kudos to them for putting together a game plan that could beat us.
Well, I think you now have to look at teams. Are they a net winner from the transfer portal or a net loser? Are they a team that loses players or is able to attract them?
Well, I guarantee you Army's a net loser.
Coach Monken said every single player on the team, on Army's football team, came in as a freshman. And, you don't have many transfers at West Point. I've heard of very few transfer ins, but you do have transfers out. Only about 80% of the incoming freshmen from our day graduate. Okay, Jack McGurk, why don't you tell us about how Navy and Air Force did?
Okay, I'll start off with Navy. They had a 31-6 win over UAB at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium down at the Naval Academy. Senior quarterback Xavier Online rushed for career high, tying 109 yards. Had a rushing touchdown while completing 7 of his 10 pass attempts for 94 yards and a touchdown in the game. Navy had 363 yards total offense, 269 rushing. Arline threw a 45-yard touchdown pass to Regis Velez for the first score of the game. That was in the second quarter. And after Navy, and later in the third quarter, I should say, Dabo Fofana came up with a 2-yard touchdown run. I'm sorry, that was with 10:08 left in the game in the fourth quarter. And then a little bit later in the same quarter, Xavier Arline came up with a 50-yard touchdown run, bringing the score to 24-6. Then big play of the game possibly here on defense by Navy. Rayon Lane came up with an interception and ran it back 97 yards for a touchdown. It was the longest interception return in Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium history, and the second longest in the Naval Academy history, next to John Rastor's 100-yard interception return against Army in 1951. With that win, Navy remains in contention for a bowl game, and they're going to be hosting East Carolina this coming weekend. They actually just beat FAU 22-7 upset over FAU, so that should be a fun game. Navy and East Carolina. Air Force, on the other hand, just dropped their second in a row. They lost to Hawaii, 27-13 win for Hawaii over Air Force. The game was in Hawaii, in Honolulu, which meant an 11 p.m. Eastern time start here, late game.
Isn't Hawaii playing in equivalent of a high school stadium this year? They're proposing having a new modern stadium built for them, but Aloha Stadium is now considered unfit for play.
Oh.
So that's, I'd be curious what stadium they played that in. They were talking about playing in a equivalent of a high school place.
Well, in the game, Air Force had 350 yards total 15 yards total offense, 201 rushing, 114 passing. Actually, Air Force scored on its opening drive, second half fullback Dylan Carson went 35 yards for his first career touchdown in the game. Carson led the team with 87 yards rushing. Early in the fourth quarter, Hawaii had a 27-10 lead as Meki Pai returned a fumble 32 yards for a touchdown in the game. DeBoer had a couple of field goals in the game for Air Force, but Air Force dropping 2 in a row after starting the season 8-0. They lose 2 games in a row to Army and Hawaii, and they're going to be back at home in Colorado Springs this weekend hosting UNLV.
Wow, where is Sam Houston when you have a loss by Air Force to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, Sam, we can catch Sam on a little private Army huddle later in the week. And interesting. Air Force is slipping, and Navy is picking up Steve. Steve, what do you think about Navy's recent success in finding a quarterback?
You know, Navy always, if you've looked back over the last couple of years, they started slow and then they pick up momentum as the year goes on. You can remember them playing BYU a few years back, just getting their teeth kicked in, and by the time they get to mid season, they start picking up speed and they start coming together. And you had a new first year head coach was trying to find his footing and find his stride, and they're running a little bit of a different offense than they were in the past, and so all that's starting to come together for them. It's also very much a preview of what the American Conference is going to look like. And we could talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but so there are teams in there that are going to provide a challenge, but there are also teams that they can go out there and win, and that's what we're going to be looking at over the next many years. So I think their schedule is conducive to them being in the hunt for bowl games, and every once in a while they could be in the hunt for the championship of that conference. So I'm not surprised by it, and quite frankly, we're looking at another slugfest in Foxborough. So we've got to get our minds straight and get ready to go for that.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Richard, why don't you tell us 5 games that stood out to you from last weekend? Just 5.
Okay, 5 games that really stood out to me from last weekend. Let's see. 5 games that number 3 Michigan with Jim Harbaugh suspended, defeated Penn State 24-15. Michigan is now 10-0 on the season. Let's see. Another game that really stood out to me was, let's see. Trying to find a game. NC State defeated Wake Forest 26-0. 26-6. Pardon me. Wake Forest goes to 4-6. NC State is 7-3. Games. Just trying to find. Okay, number 4. Florida State defeated Miami 27-20. Florida State is now 10-0 on the season. Miami goes to 6-4. You also have, let's see. Okay, number 5, Washington defeated Utah 35-28. Washington is now 10-0. And the last game that really stood out to me was, let's see, number 12, Oregon take all over Stanford 62-17. Oregon State is now 8-2 on the season, while the Stanford Cardinals go to 3-6.
That's quite a big margin for Oregon State, 62-17 over Stanford. Oregon State, one of the schools kind of left out of conference realignment. And have they found a place yet, Steve? Are they going to the Big 12, Oregon State and Washington State?
That I do not know.
Yeah, I have to check on that, because they were the 2 schools really shut out of the moves by USC and UCLA and Washington and Oregon going to the Big Ten. Okay, yeah. So before we get into Saturday, a story I was reading. It's the anniversary of the week that President Kennedy was killed, and the impact that had, monumental impact. I still remember what I was doing that day, and being called to chapel at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church, where right across from where Jack lives, when that happened. And that the NFL played that weekend, and the Army-Navy game was postponed a week, but Mrs. Kennedy asked to make sure the game was played. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Steve? The 63 Army-Navy game in Philadelphia. It's always considered a monument between, Roger Staubach playing quarterback for Navy And tell me the name of the Army quarterback. It's Raleigh Stidgewit.
Pitchway. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's always looked at as one of the most remembered games, played in front of about 100,000 people at the old Philadelphia Municipal Stadium. Any thoughts on that historical moment of Army-Navy football?
Yeah, I think it's important anytime there's a tragedy of that proportion that, and we look at 9/11 and baseball and coming back and playing baseball. And, you know, it's important for the healing of the country and for us to get back onto our regular routines when things like that happen. And it's also important for us to stop and pause and think about things that are important in your life. And I think through events that have happened recently for you, Ken, and for a lot of us, I mean, there's got to be reflection that goes on, and you got to find a way to process and to mourn. But usually sport provides hope, and it provides a respite away from something like that in your mind. And I think it's important, and we have a responsibility to, play those games because they mean more to a lot of us. And I think it was the right thing to do. And I think the president's wife was spot on really wanting that game to go off to add some normalcy back to the country. And I think it was the same thing when 9/11 happened. And I happened to be in the nation's capital that day, very close to where things were happening. And it happened to be, I was working in the headquarters of the FAA that day.
Oh, wow.
So it was it was important that even when we were there, for us to get back to normalcy, to get back to work, and to show to the team that we were, that these acts are not going to stop what Americans do on a day-to-day basis. So I think we represented all of that, and the country stopped, paused, healed, and was able to move forward when that tragedy happened.
Absolutely. Well, this Saturday, last home game of the year, it's Senior Day, and a very good team coming in, Coastal Carolina, who we saw play down in Myrtle Beach last September, opening game. Tough one for Army. That's a school that really has grown. I mean, just walking around their campus last year, you could tell how a lot of money's been invested in the school, and they want a football team that helps bring attention to them. They're also very good in baseball. I believe they won a national championship in baseball in the last 10 years. They built a beautiful stadium for baseball. It would be a first-class minor league facility in the professionals. But looks like we may not see their star quarterback, Grayson McCall. Due to injury, the fella's got 10,000 yards passing, 88 touchdowns. And Coach Monken said he's got a shot at playing on Sundays. So it could be a little bit like the Texas-San Antonio game where their starting quarterback, a notable player, was out. And so what do you think Army's got to do, Steve, to be competitive against Coastal?
It's and I was at that game also last year, and they came out, Coastal came out and was aggressive as we thought it would. And if you look at how Coastal has risen in FBS, they did it relatively rapidly, and their coach actually moved away, went to another school, but they still kept, moving forward very, very strong. Not unlike what JMU is doing right now, right? JMU is having a very successful rise into the FBS and taking no prisoners, and they're going to probably be a top 15 team when this is all said and done.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Coastal's going to come out, and they're fast, and they're going to want to push the fight. They're going to want to push on you and grind you rapidly down the field. Their wide receivers are very, very talented, and they can sling the ball around, and they're fundamentally a sound ball club. They haven't had as much success this year as they've had in the past, but they're still a lot to deal with in a lot of the areas that we haven't been, as strong. I mean, we played Air Force very, very tight. We knew where we were going to be, and we plugged the holes. But we start having to worry about the run and the pass on a regular basis. We leave our running lanes open a little bit. You saw that with Holy Cross. Holy Cross was able to slash us quite a bit. Their running back was able to have pretty much a gain at will on us. So we've got to be careful that we're lane discipline on defense and that we're not letting anybody get behind us. And it's hard for a team to put together a 9 or 10 play drive without making a mistake, but it's easier if they're scoring with 3 or 4 plays. So we got to make sure we keep the ball inside and up front, make them earn every yard, hit them when they catch it, hit them hard, and then fight for every yard. Then when we get the ball, it's the same old story. It's time of possession. Let's limit the number of opportunities that Coastal has. Let's hold on to the ball, and fewer turnovers, the better. And if we win the turnover, margin and we're able to contain them, we should be victorious. Tough team to do that. They're fairly experienced, and they've been playing at a high level for a number of years. So it's going to be a challenge for us.
Okay. They're coming off winning 5 straight games at App State. Arkansas State beat Marshall big 34-6. Won at Old Dominion, a close game, 28-24. Last game out was at Texas State. They won 31-23. They have losses this year to Georgia Southern, Georgia State, and at UCLA, their opening game. So it will be good to see them at Mikey Stadium. Steve, are there any seniors that stand out on this Army team for you? Players that you've mentored and worked with?
I haven't worked with as much as the last couple of years with this particular team. This senior leadership kind of snuck up on us without the big names that we've talked about in the past. I think we're in a kind of a transition year when it comes to the leadership of this team. So I have not worked with anybody in particular or spent a lot of time with them. But it has been, and if you hear Coach talk about this senior leadership, he's been very impressed with the way that they handle their business, which is super important to Coach, because there have been years at which he's not had that type of leadership, and it really, really drains on him. He believes in the academy, and he believes in the leadership ability of the men that he brings on the field every day, and he wants them to step up and be strong leaders across the board. He feels that way with this particular team. It hasn't always been the case. Every once in a while we have a team that doesn't have that type identity, but this team is strong in his mind leadership wise. A few games either way, and this could be a bowl eligible, very successful team. And again, I think it's a transition team with the new offense, with the schedule we have. And when they put the schedule together, they didn't think it was going to be the juggernaut that it is. So I think they grow a lot from it, and really got to look at the juniors, because they're going to be the rising seniors. They're going to take the experience from this year and take it to the next level for next year. And I expect really great things on next season coming up.
I mean, when we think of the juniors, you kind of start with Bryson Daly. It seems like he's playing so much better with 8 or 9 games under his belt and being back to healthy. Last 2 games, he's really looked sharp.
Yeah, he has. And what I hope we get away from is, Bryson is a player that he's a gamer, and he is a player that's never gonna say die. He's gonna grind it out. He's not the flashiest guy. He's not the one that has that potential on every play to break it, but he's also not going to be a guy that loses the game for you either. So we've got a couple of talented quarterbacks that are in the stable that may have a little bit more talent than him, but not as much grit and not as much power and not as much decision making in a positive way, that they're going to cut and get 3 yards safely than the potential of getting 15 yards or a fumble type of thing. And I hope we don't get enamored with the athletic ability and we stick with somebody who's a proven leader that is going to grind it out for you going into next year. So I just hope they keep that in mind when they make their choice next year for quarterback.
Okay, and quarterbacks Champ Harris and Barry Robinson and a couple others. Wayne Coleman will get more chances in spring this year. But Jack McGurk, you want to tell us a little bit about what Navy and Air Force are facing this week?
Yeah, well, interesting. Both Navy and Army are going to be taking on Carolina schools, with Navy taking on East Carolina. And Air Force, after dropping 2 in a row after starting the season 8-0, they are back at home at the Air Force Academy hosting UNLV on Saturday. So both should be interesting games. Let's see if Air Force will continue to struggle or they'll finally get a win after these 2 losses.
Yeah, I'm sure they're a team that maybe was a little bit worn out from their first 8 games. And then Army really came in and took it to them. Okay, Richard, you got a few games for us to watch this week?
Oh, definitely. I always have games for you guys
Week
to watch.
12, hard to believe. Week 12 of the college
unbelievable.
football
Week
season.
12. This Saturday, we've got the number 2 Georgia Bulldogs taking on number 13 Tennessee. Georgia is 10-0 on the season. Tennessee is 7-3 on the season. Also, you have the number 3 the number 3 Michigan Wolverines traveling to SECU Stadium in College Park, Maryland, to take on the Maryland Terrapins. The Terrapins are 6-4 on the season. You also have number 8 Alabama, 9-1, taking on Chattanooga, which is 7-3. That's at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Number 10 Penn State, 8-2, will be taking on Rutgers, 6-4 at Beaver Stadium. Also, as well, let's see. Oh yeah, the new number 1 in college football, the Ohio State Buckeyes, at Ohio Stadium, taking on Minnesota. Minnesota is 5-5. Ohio State is 10-0.
Okay, very good. I think it's interesting. I saw Georgia State. Oh, I'm sorry. Is it Georgia State, Georgia Southern that is going into LSU this weekend, and seeing how they will do against LSU. That's Georgia State going in at 6-4, playing number 19 LSU. Be kind of interested to see how they fare at LSU. Okay, well, let's come up with some scores for the Army Coastal Carolina game. And Richard, why don't you lead off our guru?
Okay, let's see. I'm gonna go Army. I'm gonna go 27-21 Army.
27-20?
27-21.
Okay, 3 touchdowns for Coastal.
Yeah.
Okay, Jack McGurk, what do you think is going to happen, Army and Coastal Carolina?
Well, I was looking up the history between these 2 schools, and I found out the only history was that they only played each other once before last season. That was a 38-28 win for Coastal Carolina. But with this game on Saturday, I'm not sure what's going on with the quarterback, Coastal Carolina's quarterback. He's been out for a few weeks. Took a hard hit in a game in late October, with his head seeming to bounce off the turf. So he was out last week, and he might be out again this weekend. But I'm going to go with Army. I'll say 35-28 Army.
35-28. You see a big scoring day for Army, and that is for Jack. Okay, Steve Shalou, what do you think? Army and Coastal Carolina, Mikey Stadium on Senior Day.
It's going to be a pretty high scoring game. Army is going to have to stay focused and control the ball a little bit. I'm thinking 31-28 Army. Pretty close to where Jack is on that.
31-28. Steve? Yeah, I think Army is struggling a little bit on offense to score 3 touchdowns. I mean, they got a special teams touchdown to get them off to a good start last week. We'll see how the defense, I think, maybe can limit Coastal Carolina. So I'm going to go take the safe route and go Army 24, Coastal Carolina 17. So I'm going to take your route and take the under of these scores. So it should be fun to be out there for Senior Day. You want to be out there at they'll start the Senior Day program 11:15 or 11:30 before the West Point band goes out on the field. I think that's the normal order. And have a chance to see so many of the seniors. I talked to Coach Monk a little bit about Jacoby Buchanan and Tyson Riley, the 2 big fullbacks that we've watched play for so many years. It's their last home game. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see the send-off. Hopefully it's a beautiful full day like it was last week. And it's a good time for everybody. So nothing like being at West Point for a football game on a beautiful fall afternoon. Hey, Steve, is there any update from your side on the project to rebuild and replace the East stands? Is that going to start happening, or are they still waiting on financing and other factors?
Yeah, everything that I'm hearing. Matter of fact, I have a meeting on this later this week. They're looking to break ground in the spring. I think once the weather breaks, and even before graduation, they're looking like they've got to go to get that going for a 2-year project on that. So looking like it's looking better and better. They've had some breakthroughs on raising money, and I think they're excited about getting that going.
Okay. Is there thought next year? Next year would be a year for Army to host the Air Force game, about playing it at somewhere other than Mikey Stadium, or?
Mike Buddy's desire to ever move it away from Mikey Stadium is low. So I think we would still play it at Mikey. I may be wrong, but I think he would still want to play it there.
Yeah. A few years ago, they proposed moving the Air Force game to Yankee Stadium. It was on the schedule, and then they pulled it and brought it back to Mikey Stadium, realizing they would almost draw better at Mikey Stadium than playing in the Bronx.
The Bronx is just, I mean, listen, I know the Yankees have affiliation with this program. It's just a tough venue to watch football. The best place in the state and the best place at Yankee Stadium to watch it is, quite frankly, I don't know what they call it now, but when I was there, it was the Delta Club in the behind home plate, which is in the end zone. And that's the best place to watch a college football game, because you're right down the chute. You got a nice place to sit. But because the way you watch baseball and the way you watch football, all the seats you're kind of turned and you're looking off to the side. And it makes it difficult to, as it goes out to the outfield, you get further and further away from the action. So it's just tough to do that in a baseball stadium. But I understand with the Yankees trying to recoup some of the funding for the Pinstripe Bowl and all the other stuff. Let's get as many games on that field as possible. But
they just played the Pittsburgh-Syracuse game there.
Right.
I got to look it up to see what the attendance was.
Syracuse won that game. It was 28-13 Syracuse. They had a 5-game losing streak going into the game. They finally won one there.
Yeah, so they're a tough game against Army. Wore them out.
Ken?
Yeah.
The club Steve is referring to is the Delta. I think it's the Delta 360 Club.
Yeah, I usually sit in when I go to the Pinstripe Bowl. I usually just get a base ticket and go up in right field in the upper deck.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to watch the game. You're right on about the 45-yard line from a very high vantage point. But yeah, it is an awkward football stadium. But I have to say, our show is sponsored by the New York Yankees, and I'd love to see. I always thought it would be interesting to have an Army Fordham game at Yankee Stadium. When Army and Fordham were playing somewhat regularly, I thought that might be an interesting attraction and give Fordham a chance to play a game at Yankee Stadium. But we'll see what happens. Okay, well, I want to say thanks, everybody. Also, want to thank our sponsors, the New York Yankees. They have a lot of promotions coming up for the 2024 season and the Pinstripe Bowl, which is Christmas week. And also want to say shout out to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, which does a terrific job mentoring and providing scholarships to children of fallen special operations community members. Are based out of Florida. Great group. And I want to thank our team. Richard Miller, thanks for your help tonight. Jack McGurk,
My
thanks
pleasure.
for your help.
Happy to
And
be here.
Steve Shalou, we will see you on Saturday at the famous Steve Shalou tailgate.
I will, Ken. And Ken, before we get off the air tonight, if anybody's watching or going to watch this recording, if you've ever had any wonderings of why we're not going or why we're going to the American Athletic Conference, is because we don't want to be stuck going to like the MAC or Conference USA. Because tonight we have exciting slate of Western Michigan and Northern Illinois playing right now, with Toledo and Bowling Green, and then Eastern Michigan against the Akron Zips on a Tuesday night. And that's where we would be a couple times a year in Mikey Stadium on a Tuesday night. And who the heck wants to do that?
Yeah.
So this is why we wanted to pick our own destiny and play on Saturdays and a better conference that has more money versus ending up on a Tuesday night between this and the holiday cake baking championship on the Food Channel. These are the two things you'd be going to get. I'm just saying.
Okay, well, good advice, and we're going to look forward next year to Army's entry to the American Conference. And I think it'd be an interesting slate of opponents. So everybody, thanks for joining in. Thanks for watching. And again, this is Ken Kraetzer for CaMMVetsMedia. We cover cadets, midshipmen, the military, and veterans proudly since 2008. And just had Veterans Day. Thank you for your service to our country, to all veterans, all our veterans like Steve Shalou who have served our country. So we'll see you at Mikey Stadium on Saturday. And so enjoy. Thanks for watching.